I'm Carol Carr from the Hutton, and I've got the pleasure of introducing this last session. I've also got the pleasure of welcoming our Stakeholders Advisory Board, who've been invaluable in sharing their knowledge and their expertise with us throughout the last 4 years. We'd all like to thank you very much for your input and for taking the time to be here during this, our final Roadmap conference. And before I start introducing the biographies, I'd just like to say I apologize for my pronunciation. Languages were never my strong point at school, so in no particular order, I'll start with Jan. Jan Vartans from the Federation of Veterinarians in Europe. And after graduating from the veterinary faculty of the University of Utrecht, Jan worked in the mixed practice pharmaceutical company, the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, and the Royal Netherlands Veterinary Association. Busy guy. From 2003 until 2021, he was the Executive Director of the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, and that was representing the veterinary profession in 41 European countries. From 2010 until 2020, Jan also worked as the Executive Secretary of the World Veterinary Association, and after his retirement in 2021, he remained involved in the Federation as a Senior Project Officer. Koen's also here today, Koen Vervoort, from the European Network of Living Labs. And Koen said he's been living the labs since 2006 at iCity, IBBT, iMinds, City of Things, IMEC, and now as a network builder at the European Network of Living Labs, building bridges and opportunities for all members and interested parties. He's over 15 years of experience in user involvement, panel management, and stakeholder engagement, and is currently focusing on the evaluation of living labs. A useful guy to have with us today. Thank you, Koen. Arno Busan is from the European Feed Manufacturers Federation. Arno is an agronomist by education and graduated from the Institut, I warned you, Institut National Agronomique Paris, Grillon? Something like that. He started his career as a policy advisor in the French Association of Feed Manufacturers in 1990 and joined FIFAC in 1998 and is now the Director for Feed Safety and Regulatory Affairs. He's primarily busy with feed legislation matters, in particular co-regulation activities, such as the Guide to Good Hygiene Practice for Compound Feed and Pre-Mixture Manufacturing, the Code of Practice for Compound Feed Labelling, and the Catalogue and Register of Feed Materials. He was recently appointed as member of the expert group Antimicrobial Resistance One Health Network. Ana Granados, thank you, is Director of the European Forum of Farm Animal Breeders, and Anna's been working for more than 20 years in topics related to EU animal breeding and farming. She has a degree from the Polytechnic University of Madrid as an agronomist in animal science and has broad experience in EU animal breeding, farming, and sustainable food production related policy. Since 2018, she's been the Director of the European Farm Animal Breeders, IFAB, and in her daily work, she follows political and research issues related to animal health and welfare, animal reproduction, breeding, and the specific issues of new animal genomic techniques. And they're here today because throughout the day, we've presented and discussed Roadmap's key results. We've discussed the systemic lock-ins to AMU change and how to overcome them, the development of preventative approaches, the need for cost-benefit analysis, and the ex-ante impact assessment, and the importance of co-building strategies with stakeholders, etc. So what we're really interested in the panel is your thoughts about the project. So first of all, I'd like to ask, what would be your general comments on the project? And do you think it's reached the important goals it hoped to achieve?
Well, thanks for the invitation, and indeed, just
oh, could you just turn on your mic?
No, does not start well. FIFAC, we are a European Federation of National Associations dealing with feed for food-producing animals. And as an organization, so we are indeed part of a number of stakeholder advisory boards. So we thank always the project for inviting us to participate in this advisory board and also to learn on a number of things. And indeed, it was also an opportunity for me to learn about living labs today. So that's certainly an interesting, but I'm not sure that the question is what my personal experience of today is, but what we believe the results of the projects are. And I mean, as an organization, federation, I mean, our business is to communicate, to discuss, to exchange, to create with other organizations. So, I mean, we are not in an unknown environment in the way you organized this project. And indeed, we would even think that maybe there are European bodies who might also take some advantage of learning from this process, how to have an inclusive consultation also of different stakeholders and also invite them to co-create rather than just imposing. But that's just a remark. In terms of deliverables, I think that something that we have already discussed this morning is the recognition of the role of the different partners in contributing to indeed the same objective, which is reduction of EMR in a One Health environment, which we do support, certainly. And for me personally, it was a recognition of nutrition, that there was something there in nutrition that was part of the solution. My problem is that nutritionists are not really identified there. In other words, nutrition is at the table, but the nutritionists are not. And that's, I think, what we can see in particular at national level in the National Action Plan, where it's not in all countries by far that the feed sector, for example, is invited to the table. But I've been already too long, sorry. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, when I look at the roadmap project, what for me is very interesting is the multidisciplinary approach. I think it's very interesting to have the different sectors and disciplines together around the table and to have this joint conversation about where do we want to go all together. And I think it's very important to work in this way when you have this multi-stakeholder issue like antimicrobial use, antimicrobial resistance, or farming practice in general. I also think that a project like Roadmap connects theory and practice. I think it's very good to have not only the scientists in the universities or in the academia or in the research center, and on the other hand, people in the field, but you bring them together and say, what do you need, what can we offer, etc., so that you have this conversation going. You can test in practice what the scientists are bringing forward and maybe then adjust these solutions. You also asked, did it reach its goals? That always depends a bit on what your ambitions are. I think, and we want to be ambitious, of course. So I think Roadmap made a very good step forward, but there's still a way to go.
Thank you. Anybody else on it?
Well, I think I can add to what Arnaud and Jan were saying. I think one of the biggest outcomes, which is very nice to see from a Living Lab perspective, because by now you know I don't know anything about AMU, so I cannot talk about that one. So is the fact that you managed to create that recognition, which Arnaud was mentioning, and to experience maybe for the first time the advantages of action research, like we call it in Living Labs, which is another way of performing, getting the scientists out of their ivory tower. The multidisciplinarity is very nice. Did you accomplish your goals? From a perspective of Living Labs, I think you made the very first important step, because when I was listening to the general recommendations earlier, everything is there to create service portfolio for individual Living Labs. And probably the question will come soon, how many will survive? Not all of you, sorry. But some of you will want to make the step beyond the Roadmap project, and then I think the crucial starting blocks are there. So well done.
Thank you.
Well, I don't think I have a lot of things to add. I'm the last one. But yeah, I agree with my colleagues here in the table. that the main achievements have been reached, and I was surprised. I mean, I have been following far, but a bit the project, of course, because part of the team of EFAF is involved in. So, and has been interesting to see how it has been evolving. That's perhaps to add something a bit different. Is the difficulties at the very beginning, and even with the pandemics in the middle, how you have been able to move forward and arrive at the results that you have. We were discussing with Chala in the coffee break that is always a bit frustrating to not be able to share all the results. But I think that there is no need, because what we have achieved through the Living Labs, I think really interesting in terms of showing that what you were saying at the very beginning, that there is no solution that is going to fit everyone. So you have taken the time to go through. Of course, the Living Labs can be bigger, and so we will need 20 years. I mean, perhaps I'm exaggerating. We will need a lot of time to get all the people involved. But I think it's a very good first step. And of course, I know that in this specific project about antimicrobial use, there is more the couple between the relationship between the farmer and the vets that has been tackled. And all the projects were addressing all the nutrition aspects and breeding, like disarm and so on. So what is interesting is to see that how you can have a horizontal communication with the other projects to integrate other aspects that are going to help on reducing the use of antimicrobials. That's I'll stop here. Because
Are there any comments for the floor or any questions for the panel? All tired, all had enough, yeah. Okay, so we mentioned we've gone so far. Where do we go now? What's the next steps? How do we take this further? We being the generic we. Yeah.
In a dear world, I would say that we should be able to, I mean, with the help of the national level, national and regional, because that's not, everything is not the same in every country. I mean, the north and the south, the different production systems complicates everything. In an ideal world, it will be to be able to provide a specific training and a specific tools to every vet in the field, and to help every farmer to move to the next step, to the next level. But that's, of course, difficult.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I was thinking, it's not only about training and about specific training programs. I think it's about letting people think, let people reflect about what do they have on their plate and how can they contribute to the solution. What is the next step? Maybe this morning we had this picture about this throwing a stone in the pond and then see these circles growing bigger and bigger. And maybe from these bigger circles, new initiatives can start, and you can have new living labs, so you grow the initiative over a wider scale. I don't think that you can expand the living lab endlessly, so it's limited. But if from one living lab you could encourage people to start the next one and the next one, then you have probably a much longer and maybe more sustainable approach.
Yeah, and if I can add to the ripple in the water thing, like I said yesterday and at noon, you need to think about which pond are you throwing the stone in. You need to allow yourself as Living Lab to grow organically. I think one of the, let me check my notes, questions from Merete was, should we start big and then go smaller, or start small and then go bigger? Within the 250 Living Labs I ran, I would say 250 times start small and become bigger, because you need to learn to fail forward. Failing forward is one of the most controversial terms. You don't see too much fail conferences, but we should have like one every week, because you can learn much more of failure than of successes. But think about which pond are you disturbing before you throw the stone in. How secure are you to throw it in the national lake instead of the lake right after your home at the beginning? So that's something which you will learn. And next to this, on the collaboration and so on, the recommendations made, and it's not about capacity building alone, but it's a crucial part. I learned multiple times the word knowledge sharing was said today, multiple times the benchmarking, the networking aspect, all these kind of things. So if the 12 roadmap living labs would like to survive, they will have to stick together and learn from each other, because you all have your specific focus, and that's necessary, but you all have overlaps, and you can learn from each other, from your weak and your strengths and your opportunities and your threats. So SWOT yourself and learn from each other. So start networking at national, regional, international level. And the last thing, which is one of the biggest obstacles, I think, which was mentioned, which is the regulatory aspects. It might be good for you to know, one, we have an agriculture working group in ENOL, so you can join it. It's open for everyone. And we have a working group together with the JRC. Is everybody familiar with JRC? Yeah. On their demand on regulatory impact. Just to position living labs as regulatory sandboxes for the problems which we are facing in your sector, but we are focusing right now on the mobility sector and everything related to the constellations with AI and every trouble that comes with it. But why shouldn't we be able to do it for Antrimap, the AMU?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? Any comments? Yeah. This microphone, that's better. Any questions? Yep. Where's my other microphone gone?
I think I can speak loud. Sorry, so Flavie Goutard from CIRAD. Thank you. Flavie Goutard from CIRAD. In fact, I'm a little bit nuts. I mean, I'm based in Vietnam. So, and I had a question about the implication of feed sectors, because you said something that struck me about the fact that feed sector is fairly less or not enough represented in the national action plan, for example. And working in Vietnam, I thought, and in different developing countries, I thought that was really something specific to Vietnam or Laos and Cambodia, but it seems not. And it's something that strikes us when we work in Vietnam about putting everybody around the table and trying to develop some solution and so. And my question is, why do you think that this sector is not enough represented, especially in the National Action Plan? And how can we put them, bring them in the table in the discussion?
I think that the starting point maybe is that feed used to be perceived as part of the problem. Being a problem meaning, well, you know how it works in a farm. There's a problem with my animal. Well, look to the feed. It must be, the responsibility must be with the feed at a certain point. So that's the first thing. And I think that, well, maybe also, well, there are commercial aspects, of course. The feed industry is suspect. I mean, they have something to sell. And the question is, indeed, how to really secure all chain partners that whatever technology or technique is available, is developed, is working. So the efficacy. I mean, we have procedures to evaluate the efficacy of medicines. We have procedures to evaluate feed additive. We may not have these procedures, at least independent procedures, to measure a simple formulation, because you can achieve a lot already with the combination of nutrients. But this is not something that is recognized. And I mean, you had the presentation of the Avant project. they talk about feed additives. They don't talk about feed formulation. So this is, I think, one important aspect. And maybe there is also a role to play for all of us to increase the visibility. And there was a nice initiative from the GRC, again, with the project IMAP, where they have listed meta-studies which were published on whatever kind of feed intervention, feed additives on animal health, environment, and so on, just to have a screening of the different meta-studies, what they deliver, how efficient this technique was, if there are 5 studies, 3 positive, 2 negative, but at least improving the transparency at that level. And that's the kind of things that we need.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks. Milly Leblanc-Maridor from the Vet School of Nantes. It's not working. Okay. I just have a comment and a question to you as well, like because for me there've been a really big progress on feed of animals. I'm talking more about like pigs and poultry, but the nutrients are really balanced now. You've got more and more like probiotics, prebiotics, some antioxidant like grapes or stuff like that, then add. And like as a vet, or we always work with a feed advisor or with nutritionists to really balance this. We've got as well more and more farmers who are like doing their own feed and they're mixing, and so they have advices. And so I was thinking, do you think that it's really the feed formulation as well, like the way to improve feed additives on it?
It is a combination of the two. If you look at the capacity to reduce protein levels, because that's one. So how do we achieve that? It's also because of amino acids. And amino acids are feed additives. So it's really a combination. You cannot just take one or the other. It's together. But of course, the difficulty when you have a mix of something which delivers as a mix is to identify which contribution of each element and the symbiosis and so on. So these are things which also can deliver for a farm, but not for another farm. And that's the additional layer of difficulty. So whenever that's why I think that maybe the nutritionist the position of the nutritionist is important at the farm level. At the national or European level, it is also important, but just more as guidance to help screening as a screening exercise. But the reality of the farm is what matters at the end.
Yeah, if I may add to that, one of the other projects of the Armor cluster that was mentioned by Luca in the previous presentation is the Healthy Livestock project. I was involved in that project. It's now coming to an end. The last date was the end of February, and we are now finalizing the reporting. And the approach Healthy Livestock has chosen was to improve animal health and welfare, and through that reduce the need to use antimicrobials. So coming from that side, improving animal health and animal welfare. And there were several work packages, and I think the two most important there to reach that goal was biosecurity. How can you address biosecurity in a more structured way, not hap, snap everywhere a bit, but how do we look at the whole farm? Where are the weak points? What should we do to improve biosecurity? And the other one was how to improve the resilience of the animals. And there are many, many ways how you can improve the resilience of the animal. And that's also very much depending on better animal husbandry practices, like good housing conditions, good temperature, humidity, etc. in the stable. And also good feed is a very important part of the whole system to raise the resilience of the animals, and by that making them better protected against diseases and reduce the need to use antimicrobials.
Yeah, I have a question to all of you. We always use like resilience and resilient animals. Should not be better to talk about robustness and robust animals?
I would say that it is part of the resilience is robustness, but resilience should be a bigger concept, a broader concept. But yeah, I agree with you that there is a bit of robustness depends of the way you consider. In a breeding program, you have what is robustness that is going to be defined differently depending on the species, depending on the production system. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a difficult definition, a difficult. Robustness is. Is the capacity to resist, let's say. But resilience definitely will be wider because for me it also implies animal welfare, not only animal health alone. That's exactly. And resilience it's a bigger concept for me, really, definitely. But I don't know if anybody else wants to jump on this question, because I have also a question for, if I may. No, I have a question that is not related to resilience. That's why. Go
okay.
ahead.
Well, I must say I didn't think about that question, robustness and resilience, very much so. But my first reaction would be, when I think about robustness, I think more about some characteristics that are inherited to the species, to the animal. This is a robust breed or whatever. So that there's not much to change when the animal is there. And resilience is a level in the animal that you can change in its lifetime. So by having better conditions under which you keep it, you can raise the resilience. So that's how I would look upon that. But as I said, I'm not an expert there.
Did you want to follow up on that?
Did you? Just a point on the. Hello? Yes. Okay. On there. On that?
No.
Okay. Sorry. About the feed, I'm an animal nutritionist, and so I think that there is a new challenge for the future, because nutrition and feeding are not definitive science, so it's a science in evolution, and the Commission asked to use more circular diet, more circular product, and this implies to know the anti-nutritional factor, so it's important even the way in which formulate the diet. And the other point that we need to increase is the requirement of our animals in terms of nutrient, for example, in suboptimal sanitary condition, because all the nutrition requirements are obtained in healthy condition. The objective are to maximize the performance, not to maximize the health. So there are so much to do, and the nutrition and feeding are very important topic to in this context. So to maintain the welfare and the health of the animals. So I think that there are so much to understand and to improve on this matter.
Yeah, I just have a comment why I ask you this question, but it's because a resilient person is someone able to accept difficult circumstances or like the emotions they provoke. So I agree with you, like we have to bring everything for the health and the welfare of the animals. And for me, we have to have like robust animal, and in robustness I include welfare, health and welfare. But like when you say resilience, it's like a way that the animal has to adapt to difficult conditions or to something wrong. That's why like it's really a tricky word for me.
Anna, did you want to say something?
If Arnaud is not responding on the nutrition side, I just, but they are conversing between them, so we don't have anything to say.
I don't think there was a question.
No, but it was a comment. I wanted to make a comment because you mentioned that this is a question of performance, and nutrition. I was wondering, what do you think is performance? Because from a breeding perspective, it's also they use the less feed, the better use of the resources. So it's a less feed with the most of the animal is taken, and the less excretion and the less waste. So reducing nitrogen excretion and these kind of things. And I was wondering if you were talking about performance in terms of production or performance in terms of the use of the feed.
We have the table of nutritional requirement of the animal when we provide in our software the feed formula for the animals. So we have some data that we use as a milestone to define the requirement of the animal. This data derived from trials done in experimental stations that are targeted to maximize the production, so for pigs, the growth performance of the animals. Of course, now there is the question of efficiency. There is another part, but it's not included in the table that we use, okay? So the requirements are based on healthy animal, but the nutrient requirement change when the animal is under challenge condition, environmental condition like warm temperature or illnesses. Tryptophan, threonine are born to maintain the immune response. So it's clear, but this is the point that we know, but are not well standardized in the formulation of the feed. But it's so just for me, efficiency is one thing. Was just to put the focus on the requirement used for the formulation, not on the concept of reduction, etc., etc. That is very important, of course, but is other things.
Yes, quickly.
Now, it's true that we have to change a number of parameters. The KPIs will never be the same that they used to be. Now we need also to have the regulatory framework evolving, because today a feed additive is still evaluated with healthy animals and the efficiency measured in terms of zootechnical performance first. And this framework has to change, but okay, it will still take time, unfortunately. But for the other parameters, for feed materials, for compound feed, we can communicate also on the efficiency base also, as long as we do not go beyond the limits of health claims.
Okay, I'm just going to pull it away from feed for a second or two, because I've got a question for Koen, actually, I think. So, to what extent do you think Living Labs can achieve change when the big players have so much power over policymakers and are prone to maintaining the system as it is?
No, you put the question as if the Living Labs should not be able to influence the big players.
It wasn't quite meant like that. But
no, I thought so, but okay. Yeah. If you want to ease up that process, you should get them on board, and then you should think about what's in for them to join your initiative as an orchestrator of an ecosystem. And showing the results of Roadmap could be already a good first step to break that monopoly, which is without any doubt present in many EU countries and beyond. The crazy thing about Living Labs is that they are perceived as independent by all actors in the quadruple helix. The quadruple helix, for those who are not aware, it's the 4 levels which Mette was explaining earlier. You have the society people, the farmers in your case, or the customers. You have academia, you have the public sector, and you have the private sector. These are the actors from the quadruple helix. Bringing them together from day one, thinking about the problem which you want to solve, And creating a shared vision and mission, which was mentioned multiple times today, is the crucial step for all of them. Not only, even when they are not involved in the further process, they will be affected. I was mentioning you need to get those stakeholders aboard which are not triggered or interested or involved in your project, but they are affected. So the big players will be affected by the Living Labs activities. And I read the booklet, and I know that Italy was somehow saying, yeah, but we have so fragmented farmers, so they can never get a voice. Then the first step as the Living Lab is collect the voice of the farmers to make the voice much important. Maybe important to understand also in a Living Lab, at this stage, all Living Labs and Roadmap are in the meso stage, except for Feeble. Apologies, Bernadette. If you want to become sustainable and to have real influence on the ecosystem, you will have to make the jump if you want to. You don't need to. You can just stop as well, to the macro level. So a Living Lab exists out of 3 levels. You have the macro level, the meso level, and the micro level. The macro level is the constellation of a Living Lab, and bringing together all the actors of the quadruple helix in a kind of governance structure with a vision, a mission, a strategic plan, and so on. That's the macro level, equipment, infrastructures, everything which is related to it. This macro level will organize meso Living Lab projects, of which Roadmap could be one. I was talking to, I think it is it Annick from ZLTO? So what's happening after Roadmap with our Living Lab? And then apparently in ZLTO, they are hosting 100 projects at this given moment. There are many projects in ZLTO who could benefit from services hosted by the ZLTO Living Lab, let's say. So the services of a Living Lab will never deal with AMU or reduce of whatever, or breed or feed or whatever strange terms I don't know about, but will be about benchmarking, networking, capacity building, knowledge sharing, participatory approach. And so you will have many players, the big players, the governance saying, yeah, we should do something about it, but we have no clue how to start. Yeah? So the Living Lab could say, oh yeah, but you can just come to us, we will do it for you. That's how many Living Labs in our network are creating a service portfolio for themselves, for instance, among many other things.
Are there any more questions from the floor? Because I'm aware that time's ticking on and I've been categorically told to wrap this up by 5 o'clock. Yes, Phil?
Big important question now. Are you more concerned about just reducing total antibiotic use, or is it all about preventing further antibiotic resistance from occurring? Because we've got farms in the UK where we're telling them to stop using so much medicine. So rather than giving 5 days of penicillin, they give 3 days of penicillin. And they think, well done, we've reduced our antibiotic use. And I'm saying, well done, guys, you've now got penicillin-resistant bacteria. So what's more important, total reduction or keeping the drugs working?
I would think the final goal is to have effective and safe antimicrobials available and accessible. That is what we aim to have in the animal health sector and in the public health sector. And reducing the use of antimicrobials in animal health or in public health is an instrument to get closer to that goal. But the final goal remains having these products available. And as I said before, I wouldn't care that much if in an exceptional case there is a use of antimicrobials in farms because there is a special situation or I don't know, something happened and that animals get sick. I think then you have to use it. But it should not be something that is repeated time and time again. So because then, if that is the case, then the husbandry system is not correct. Then you have to adapt the system, and still you should have this, difficult to translate. Well, this, in the end, this system that if something happens, then you can use them. But it should not be a kind of easy to use tool and cheap to use tool. No, only when in exceptional case you have to need to use it, then it should be available. That is for me the final goal.
It should be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, I would say the word vangnet, but I don't know how to translate
Which one?
it. Vangnet.
Oh, safety net.
Safety net.
Okay, I think I saw one more hand going up. Short one.
Yes. To have efficient antibiotics. So you don't think that antimicrobial resistance, in the moment you use antibiotics, you will have antimicrobial resistance. So there is also an issue to find new drugs, new efficient drugs, and not only reducing the use. So, because if you use, so it's a natural process, it's sort of selection. So,
yes, I think with every use of antimicrobials, you trigger the selection of the resistant strains. That's inherent to the use of antimicrobials. But if you can reduce it to such a level that after the use, the normal situation can come back, then you already have gained a lot. The other thing what you mentioned is having new products available. It's also part of the solution. But when we look what is in the research and development pipelines of the pharmaceutical companies at this moment, that's very little. So I think it's therefore very important that we try to keep the products we have at the moment safe and effective. Well, effective we are speaking about now, because otherwise we will run out of products when we lose them. There will be no new, well, not in a short term, so we have to be very careful with the ones we have.
Any more before I wrap this up? No? Shouldn't have said that, should I?
It's not a question, it's just an addition. If there will be new antibiotics, they will go to the human field. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I'd just like to say thank you to the panel for being with us, and thank you to everybody for attending this conference, the final SAD conference of Roadmap.